Hi, welcome to Wilmington on Video. I'm Marvin Cruz and this is my co-host John Madrigal.
On our show, we'll be taking you on a historical tour.
John, this must mean that we're going to visit some cool faraway places.
No, Marvin, in fact, we're not even going to leave Wilmington.
But there's nothing in Wilmington. What kind of show will it be?
Sure there is. There's so much history in Wilmington that we're not going to have one show, but two. This is only part one. Did you know there are 9 registered monuments in Wilmington? How many can you name? In part one, we'll be looking at 5 of them. The first monument on our tour will be the Old Wilmington Library. For a report, let's go out on location to one of our reporters, Rosario Morales.
Thank you, John and Marvin. I'm Rosario Morales, and I am standing in front of the Wilmington Community Building. Welcome to Wilmington's first library building. Before this was built, the library was in the City Hall building that used to stand on Avalon Boulevard between Anaheim and I Streets. At that time, Avalon Boulevard was called Canal Street. In 1926, the city of Los Angeles purchased this lot for $11,000, and the Spanish-style library building was built for $28,000, which was a lot of money in those days. It was big news when the new library opened on March 14, 1927 with over 8,000 books. In 1928, the number of borrowers almost doubled and more tax money was spent over the years until the shelves were filled to its 25,000 book limit. Beyond the checkout desk was a children's area and was called the Robin Hood Room. Over the fireplace, there is a young boy sitting and reading a book of fairy tales while the characters from the stories parade before him. The books, which at this time overflowed into the auditorium, closed in 1988. Here in the rear of the building is the auditorium, which was once used for programs and community meetings. Now it is the headquarters of the Wilmington Historical Society, where everyone can come and learn about the history of Wilmington and the harbor. This is Rosario Morales reporting from the Old Wilmington Library Original Circulation Desk. Now back to the studio.
Thank you, Rosario. Hey John, I've actually seen that building before, but I never thought of it as a monument.
And that's the first one, and we have 8 more to go.
Next is Adriana, who will be hosting Quiz Time.
Hi, I'm Adriana Garcia, and welcome to Quiz Time. During Quiz Time, I'll test your knowledge on Wilmington history. At the end of part 2, I will be giving you all of the answers. Here's question number 1. What is the oldest elementary school in Wilmington? Is it Broad Avenue, Gulf Avenue, Wilmington Park, Freeze Avenue, or Hawaiian Avenue? I will be back soon with question number 2. This is Adriana. Now back to the studio.
Thank you, Adriana. We will be looking forward to the answer.
Phineas Banning was known as the king of transportation and father of Los Angeles Harbor. And now we will go out to Edgar Gonzalez for our next monument, Phineas Banning's house, the Banning Residence Museum.
Thank you, John. I'm Edgar Gonzalez. Come and join me for a look at one of Wilmington's top historic sites, the Banning Residence Museum.
The year was 1851, and the man who would become the most important person in the history of Wilmington, Phineas Banning, arrived in San Pedro from Philadelphia. He began working for William Sanford and soon had his own freighting and staging business. Banning moved his business to a new town he helped establish, New San Pedro, and started developing an important harbor. As this new town and its harbor became important, Banning changed the name of New San Pedro to Wilmington in honor of Wilmington, Delaware, a city near Banning's birthplace. This happened in 1863. As Banning prospered, he built a great house. Houses at the time were low to the ground, but Banning's new house had 3 stories and a basement. It was completed in 1864 and has 23 rooms and is designed like an ancient Greek temple. Its many rooms are decorated to look like it did during the 60 years that the Banning family lived there. This home was a working ranch with many types of grain grown here to feed the livestock. There were orchards of walnuts, olives, lemons, and lime trees. There were also chicken coops and 3 barns that housed cows and horses. Phineas Banning brought his wife Rebecca to live there. Only 3 of their 9 children survived, and Rebecca died giving birth to their 9th child. Banning then married Mary Hollister, and they had 3 children. Although Banning was never in the military, he was appointed as a general by the California militia. His unit was never used in a battle. He insisted on being called general for the rest of his life. After the Civil War, he became a state senator. He then helped bring the Southern Pacific Railroad to the port, linking it to the rest of the country. This helped the population of the area to rise upward. General Phineas Banning died in 1885 after an illness. He was 54 years old. Family members continued to live in his great house until it was sold to the city of Los Angeles in the mid-1920s. With the exception of becoming an officer's quarters of a military camp in Banning Park during World War II, Banning's house became a showpiece with occasional tours. It was restored and became a full-time museum in the 1970s. Even today, Phineas Banning's great vision for the harbor has helped Wilmington, as part of the Port of Los Angeles, to become one of the busiest harbors in the world. His name is still being honored in Wilmington today with Banning Boulevard, Banning High School, Banning Park and Recreation Center, and Banning's Landing.
Thank you for joining me. This is Edgar Gonzalez. Back to John and Marvin.
Thanks, Edgar, for that report on the Banning House and the important Wilmington pioneer, Mr. Phineas Banning.
Banning High School, Banning Park, Banning Boulevard. Of course, I know all of these places. Now we know what this man's all about. Now back to Adriana for more quiz time.
I'm back for question number 2. Did you know that at one time Wilmington was in the Guinness Book of World Records? Can you name this record? Was it A, for having the tallest palm tree? B, for being the home of the man with the largest afro? C, making the largest burrito? Or was it D, the home of the largest cigar box? Now back to Marvin.
Thanks, Adriana. What's our next monument?
We would now be going to Ernesto Tovar to take a look at the camphor trees.
Thank you, John and Marvin. My name is Ernesto Tovar. Near Banning Park on Lacme Avenue is another monument, the camphor trees. On December 18, 1990, the 52 camphor trees along both sides of the street of the 1200 block of Lacme Avenue, which is behind Banning Park, was made a Los Angeles Historical Cultural Monument. In 1919, the three sons of Phineas Banning sold Catalina Island to chewing gum owner William Wrigley Jr. Wrigley wanted to create a neighborhood for the executives who ran his companies, the Wilmington Transportation Company and the Catalina Island Company. The Bannings sold much of their land in this area to Wrigley. In 1927, Sid Spearn, a local architect and builder, created a very unique neighborhood with many different styles and designs. It was named Lackme Avenue after Phineas Banning's favorite opera. At this time, People's Nursery of Wilmington supplied camphor trees for $1 each, and they were planted along Lackme Avenue. This is a picture taken in 1927. Standing in the same spot today, you can see that these trees have almost created a tunnel across Lackme Avenue. Camphor trees are originated in China and are used to create shade, wood products, and oil. The oil has several medical uses ranging from relieving of coughs, minor muscle pains, cuts, and to calm nerves. As you can see, the roots of these trees are very strong and can destroy sidewalks. This is Ernesto Tovar. Now back to the studio.
Thank you, Ernesto. Hey, John, how does a monument get registered?
I don't know, but why don't you go find out and report back to us during part 2.
I'll do that.
Now back to Adriana and question number 3.
What is the oldest church building in Wilmington? Is it A, St. Peter and Paul? B, St. John's Episcopal Church? C, the Memory Chapel Calvary Presbyterian Church? Or was it D, Holy Family? Now let's go out to Andres for a look at one of Wilmington's historic churches.
Thank you, Adriana. I'm Andres Suarez, and I'm in front of one of Wilmington's oldest churches, St. John's Episcopal Church. The first church services were held in the new St. John's Episcopal Church the day after Christmas, 1882. This church was built under the guidance of Mrs. Phineas Banning, who donated the lumber. The church bell had been a gift from Mrs. Banning that has been salvaged from a steamship that sunk in San Pedro Bay. The bell in the church's bell tower had a rope down the outside of the building and was used to call firemen for fire drills and calls. Old newspaper articles stated that the volunteer firehouse was located next door to the church. The first annual report, given in 1883, revealed 13 families belonging to the church. There were 22 family members, 15 adults, and 7 children. The original site of the church was 420 Canal Street, which is now Avalon Boulevard. At the time, this location was considered the far north end of Wilmington. The inside of the church has an altar made of rose marble quarried from Catalina Island by the Banning family. In 1925, Banning's heirs donated this altar, which was meant to serve as a buffet in the Banning residence. The altar rails made at Pearl Harbor from the fittings of a World War I submarine were added a year later. Mary Banning donated these stained glass windows in memory of her husband Phineas and her daughter Ellen. In 1945, St. John's Episcopal Church was moved to its present location at 1537 Neptune Avenue. In 1950, a small parish house was added at the rear end of the church. The building is kept in excellent repair and is still used for regular church services. I'm Andres. Now back to the studio.
Thank you, Andres, for the report on one of Wilmington's old churches. John, I'm going to go with St. John as the oldest church. How about you?
I say St. Peter and Paul.
Now let's go with Adriana for some more quiz time.
Hi, I'm back for question number 4. What well-known national fast food restaurant opened its first restaurant in Wilmington? Was it A, McDonald's, B, Wienerschnitzel, C, Jack in the Box, or D, Taco Bell? Now back to John.
Our next and last monument of this program is another church, the Memory Chapel. When it was first built, it was called the Calvary Presbyterian Church. In case you were wondering, Marvin is going to tell us just what Presbyterian and Episcopal religions are.
Two of the major Christian religions are Roman Catholics and the Protestants. Protestants are broken into many groups, with two of them being Presbyterian and Episcopalian. Now let's go out to Liliana Frausto and the Memory Chapel.
Thank you, Marvin. I'm Liliana Frausto, and welcome to the Memory Chapel. The Presbyterians in Wilmington were meeting at a schoolhouse for Sunday school services in the late 1860s at the corner of F and Marine. The building of a church was called for and built for $2,200 in 1870 and called the Calvary Presbyterian Church. Judge Benjamin Wilson, the famed Don Benito, who was a former mayor of Los Angeles, donated the land at the corner of Fries and G. A notable minister during the late 1880s was Reverend S. Hall Young, who achieved fame during the Klondike Gold Rush in Alaska. He regularly traveled to Wilmington from Long Beach on horseback to conduct services. Because of Wilmington's growth, the number of members outgrew its church and a larger church was built. This church burned down in 1928. Because of a need for a Presbyterian church in East Wilmington, the Memory Chapel was moved to 1518 East Young Street and was named the Wilmington Park Presbyterian Church. Closed down and nearly abandoned during the Great Depression, it was moved in 1939 to 1146 Marine Avenue and named the Memory Chapel. It still remains at this location, which is next to the current Calvary Presbyterian Church. The inside and outside remains much the same as it did in 1870, with original pews and a wood-burning stove. The ladies and gentlemen entrances, which was customary when it was built, are still standing. The Memory Chapel is still in use today for Sunday school. This is Liliana Frausto sending you to Adriana for quiz time and question number 5.
Now it's time for the last question. Question number 5. Which Wilmington street name was not named after a person? Was it A, Fries Avenue, B, Opp Street, C, Denny Street, or D, Lackme Avenue? I already know all of the answers, and so will you if you join us for part 2. This is Adriana Garcia for quiz time. Now back to John and Marvin for the conclusion of part 1 of our look at Wilmington monuments.
Thank you, Adriana, for bringing us quiz time. I know I'll be looking forward to all those answers.
Me too. I especially want to know if the man with the largest afro lives in Wilmington.
We've run out of time. I hope you all learned something about Wilmington's monuments, and I hope you join us for part 2. I'm John Madrigal.
And I'm Marvin Cruz, reporting for Wilmington on Video's look at Wilmington's monuments.
Hi, I'm John Madrigal with my co-host Marvin Cruz, and welcome to part 2 of Wilmington on Video's look at Wilmington history. In part 1, we looked at 5 of the monuments: the Old Wilmington Library, the Banning Residence Museum, the Camphor Trees, St. John's Episcopal Church, and the Memory Chapel. And on today's show, we will not only be looking at the 4 remaining monuments, but hearing the quiz time answers. So Marvin, what do you think of Wilmington and its history now?
You were right to having a lot of history, but there's nothing about soldiers, guns, wars, explosives, stuff like that.
We're not done yet. The first monument we will take a look at was built in 1882. It is the former home of the Masonic Lodge, and here's Alexis Navarrete to tell you more about it.
Hi, I'm Alexis Navarrete. Another historical site here in Wilmington is the Masonic Lodge. This is one of our oldest buildings. The Masons, which are also called Freemasons, were a gentleman's social and civic club that was started in Europe many centuries ago. In the beginning, its members were Masons. A Mason is a stone or bricklayer. but soon after men of other professions began joining. It is only the second Masonic lodge to be built in Los Angeles. The compass with a G is a very sacred symbol of the Masons. Wilmington's Masonic Lodge was designed and built by E.N. MacDonald. The first master or president was Nathaniel Narbonne, who became the namesake of Narbonne High School. 100 years ago, Wilmington was called the Mudflat. This was because when the ocean tide came in, it really came in, and at low tide it was a soggy mess. The harbor was also too shallow for ships to stay, and the U.S. government began to dredge the harbor to make it deeper. From the dredging, all the silt was pumped to the north of town, leaving buildings underneath the silt. The Masons decided to raise and repair their building. In 1922, because of a growing membership, the Masonic Lodge sold the building and built a new one several blocks away. The old building is currently being used as a ship supply business.
I'm Alexa Navarrete, and now back to John and Marvin.
Thank you, Alexis. A city's historical society is a place where anyone could go and find out about the city's history. So we thought we would send one of our reporters there. Here is Kristen on location at the Wilmington Historical Society.
Hi, I'm Kristen Mashami, and I'm here at Wilmington's Historical Society, and my assignment here today is to find something interesting about Wilmington's history. I'll be back later to show you what I found. Now back to the studio.
Thank you, Kristen. We'll go back to you later to see what you dug up. Here, Marvin, you can introduce the next monument.
The next two monuments have to do with soldiers, wars, guns, explosive, stuff like that. Here's our reporter, Ruben Huizar, who is out at the drum barracks.
Thank you, Marvin. I'm Ruben Weasel, and I'm standing in front of one of Wilmington's top landmarks, the drum barracks.
This is the oldest building we will see. It was built in 1862. The drum barracks was the headquarters for the Union Army in Southern California and the Arizona Territory from 1862 to 1871. At first, there were just tents, and it was named Camp Drum after General Richard Coulter Drum. In 1862 and 1863, 22 buildings were built, and it was renamed the Drum Barracks. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, there were a number of people who were for the South in the Wilmington area. Phineas Vanning and B.D. Wilson gave 60 acres of land to the government to build a fort to protect the Union and the harbor. There was never a battle here, but soldiers from the drum barracks marched to Arizona to help push back Confederate soldiers who were making their way towards Southern California. At the drum barracks, there were 19 wooden buildings and 3 buildings made of stone or brick. These buildings included a hospital, 5 barracks for soldiers to live in, 3 officer quarters, a bakery, laundry, stables, and a guardhouse. There were camels at the drum barracks in 1862. They were used to carry supplies, but they didn't last long because the soldiers preferred to use mules. In 1871, the drum barracks were no longer needed, and the land went back to owners B.D. Wilson and Phineas Vanning. It was used as a boarding house or a private residence until it was bought by the state of California in 1965. It opened as a museum in 1987. The only wooden building still standing is the junior officer quarters. A visit to the drum barracks shows a display of the equipment and weapons used by soldiers.
and shows life in army camps in the 1860s. There is a parlor showing the style of the period. Also at the drum barracks is a large library. It is said to be the only library west of the Mississippi River devoted to the study of the Civil War. This library has books containing all of the official records of the war. In these records, you can also read through orders and letters from commanders to learn what was happening at the drum barracks and elsewhere in California during the Civil War. If you have never visited the drum barracks, come on down for a look at some old Wilmington history. This is Ruben Weezar, back to the studio.
Thanks, Ruben. If you have never visited the drum barracks, I hope you take his advice and take a tour. Now out to Kristen to see what she found.
The first thing I found is some money. On it is printed the First National Bank of Wilmington, with President Benjamin Harrison on the front. At this time, states were allowed to print money with city names on it. These bills were in existence from about 1910 to 1929. This is Kristen reporting from Wilmington's Historical Society. Now on to Guillermo at the Powder Magazine.
Hi, I'm Guillermo Duarte. Have you ever seen the structure behind me and wonder what its history is?
Ever heard of the Powder Magazine here in Wilmington? It's a place where a lot of gunpowder and other highly explosive material was kept in the 1860s during the Civil War. It didn't always look like this. It was in much better shape during the 1800s. The building of the Powder Magazine was a necessity. The ammunition at the drum barracks was stored in a very unsecured place. This was dangerous for the soldiers and the residents of Wilmington. The Powder Magazine is the only other part of the drum barracks still standing. Its construction was done with safety in mind in case of an accident or the unlikely attack of the magazine. The walls of the magazine were constructed with stone and brick 3 feet thick. The roof, however, was made nice and light. This would allow an explosion to blow up and out the roof while keeping the walls intact, which would help protect the men. Eventually, when the North beat the South, Camp Drum was no longer needed, and the government ordered it abandoned and sold it to Phineas Banning for $16. He wanted to use it for storage, but it did not prove useful. In 1923, a wooden building was built enclosing the Powder Magazine. At this time, it became a cold storage shed for a meat market. For many of the following years, the wooden structure, which was converted into a duplex, became a residence. The Powder Magazine, which was still inside, was used either for storage or as a bedroom. In 1982, the City of Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety condemned the aging wooden structure. After half of the Powder Magazine's roof was destroyed during demolition, a local resident who thought the building had historical value stopped the workers and called police. This action saved the Powder Magazine. Later in 1982, the Powder Magazine was named a historical monument. To keep out vandals, a 12-foot high fence was built around the property. Looking closely at the Powder Magazine, one can see some fascinating examples of 19th and 20th century graffiti. For future restoration, the original bricks from the building's damaged roof were saved and are currently stored inside. This very historic structure, though damaged and weed-infested, continues to receive proposals to be restored.
I'm Guillermo Duarte from inside of the Powder Magazine. Now back to John and Marvin.
Thanks, Guillermo. Now is that more like you, Marvin?
Now that's my kind of history. Now out to Kristen at the Historical Society for even more Wilmington history.
I'm back for another interesting item here at the Wilmington's Historical Society. This time it's a newspaper. It's from 1909 and it says that President Taft, the 27th President of the United States, came through Wilmington on a train and said in a short speech, "So this is the little city of Wilmington." So if you want to know more about Wilmington's history, come on down to the Wilmington's Historical Society. I'm Kristen Mashemi, now back to John and Marvin.
Thank you, Kristen, for the information. The President of the United States actually passed through Wilmington.
In part 1, Marvin was to report back on how a historical place gets registered as a monument. Marvin?
When I did my research, this is what I was sent. This is how a historical place becomes a monument. Step 1. Any person who thinks a landmark should be a historical monument files an application to the City of Los Angeles Cultural Heritage Commission. This is the application, and it's pretty long too. Step 2. The commission reviews and then visits the site. Step 3. If recommended by the commission, it is then given to the Arts and Health and Humanities Committee of the City Council who votes on it. Step 4. The full LA City Council then votes. Step 5. It then goes back to the Cultural Heritage Commission who issues a registration number and a sign. And that's how a monument becomes a monument.
Good job, Marvin. Now it's time to visit the last monument. Here's Kimberly Correa at the Old Wilmington Cemetery.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Correa. The historic Wilmington Cemetery is the second oldest cemetery in the city of Los Angeles.
The cemetery in Wilmington was established in 1857. It was built on 5 acres of property belonging to Phineas Banning. We know very little of the cemetery's early history. In the 1920s, the size of the original cemetery was doubled in size to its present 10 acres. The cemetery was in such bad shape, the Chamber of Commerce in 1960 started the cemetery beautification project. The headstones were laid down to make lawn cutting easier. There are 14 Civil War veterans buried in our historic cemetery, along with veterans from the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. Local pioneers buried here are Eberhard Rapp, Nathaniel Norbon, Andrew Young, Phineas Banning's first wife, and 4 of his children. Members of the Dodson and the Sepulveda families are also buried here.
You may ask, was Phineas Banning buried here? The answer is that he was, but his second wife later moved him to a cemetery in Los Angeles. I'm Kimberly Correa. Now back to the studio.
Thanks, Kim. There sure are some well-known harbor area pioneers buried there. When we found out Phineas Banning wasn't buried in Wilmington Cemetery, we obtained pictures of his grave, which is located at Rosedale Cemetery in Los Angeles.
Our tour is over and I really learned a lot. But the show is not over until we hear the quiz time answers. Unfortunately, Adriana is on another assignment. And here is Kristen with the answers.
Hi, I'm here again for quiz time, but this time I'll be giving you the answers, so take out your papers. The first question is, which is the oldest elementary school in Wilmington? Is it A, Broad Avenue, B, Gulf Avenue, C, Wilmington Park, D, Fries Avenue, or E, Hawaiian Avenue? Broad Avenue was built in 1963. Gulf Avenue in 1923. Wilmington Park started in 1909, although the current building was built in 1926. Fries Avenue started in 1923, and Hawaiian Avenue started around 1942. So the correct answer is C, Wilmington Park. The second question, for what record was Wilmington in Guinness Book of World Records for? Was it A, for having the tallest palm tree, B, for being the home of the man with the biggest afro, C, for making the largest burrito, or D, the home of the largest cigar box? The correct answer is C, for making the largest burrito. This burrito was constructed in Wilmington on April 11, 1992. It was about 2,000 feet long. At the time, it set the world's record for the longest burrito. Question 3. What's the oldest church building in Wilmington? A. St. Peter and Paul, B. St. John's Episcopal Church, C. the Memory Chapel, or D. Holy Family? Well, St. Peter and Paul has been around since 1865, but the current church was built in 1930. St. John's Episcopal Church was built in 1883. The Memory Chapel was built in 1870. And Holy Family in 1947. So the answer is the Memory Chapel. Question 4. Which fast food restaurant opened its first restaurant in Wilmington? Was it McDonald's, Wiener Schnitzel, Jack in the Box, or Taco Bell? The answer is Wiener Schnitzel, originally called the Wiener Schnitzel. It opened in Wilmington at Pacific Coast Highway and Gulf Avenue on July 3, 1961. There are now about 320 Wiener Schnitzel restaurants across the nation. Now for the last question. Which street was not named after an important person? Was it A. Fries Avenue, B. Opp Street, C. Denny Street, or D. Lackme Avenue? Fries Avenue was named after Captain Amos Fries. He was an Army Corps engineer who helped design the harbor. Gerard Opp and Louis Denny were both local bankers. Lackme Avenue was named after Phineas Banning's favorite opera, so the answer is D. Lackme Avenue. Now that you know the answers, try quizzing your friends and family. This has been Kristen Buscemi with Quiz Time. Now back to John and Marvin for the conclusion of our show.
Thank you, Kristen. Besides knowing all 9 monuments, now I know which school and which church is the oldest, and that Wilmington had its own money printed.
What do you think of Wilmington's history now, Marvin?
I think there's a lot of cool history here, and I'm going to go visit some of these places.
I hope you enjoyed our show and our tour of Wilmington's monuments. Thank you for watching. For Wilmington on Video, I'm John Madrigal, and this is my co-host, Marvin Cruz.